They say competition reveals character, but for a Sigma male, it reveals something else: silence. While others scramble to prove themselves, raise their voices, and fight for recognition, the Sigma steps back, not because he's afraid, not because he's weak, but because he understands something they don't. Real power doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it doesn't wrestle for attention. Real power moves quietly, observes patiently, and chooses its moment with precision. And in a world obsessed with outperforming everyone else, the Sigma's refusal to compete becomes the very thing that sets him apart. He doesn't enter battles that don't matter. He doesn't measure his worth through comparison. He doesn't care who is louder, faster, or more eager to prove something. While others exhaust themselves fighting for a spotlight that fades in seconds, he conserves his energy for the moments that count. His silence is not surrender, it is strategy. He watches people reveal their insecurities through competition, their desperation through ego, their emptiness through bragging. And the quieter he stays, the more powerful he becomes, because he knows one truth: the person who needs to win the most is usually the least in control. Before we begin, I want to ask you, are you the type who stays silent when everyone else feels the need to compete? If yes, comment Qui Power so I know you're part of the Silent Wise community. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to Silent Wise, where silence isn't weakness, it's intelligence. He doesn't need external validation. Competition only matters to those seeking approval. A Sigma male learned long ago that the loudest competitor in the room is usually the emptiest. The need to outperform others, to be noticed, to be celebrated, to be acknowledged. All of it stems from a hunger for validation. But the Sigma doesn't share that hunger. His worth is not determined by applause, rankings, or victories others can witness. His compass points inward, not outward. While others compare themselves to whoever stands beside them, he compares himself only to who he was yesterday. That's why competition doesn't ignite him. It bores him. He sees it for what it truly is: a battlefield for people who don't know who they are without someone else to beat. He watches people jump into conflict simply because they want to be seen, want to be praised, want to feel important for a moment. He sees the desperation in their eyes when they try to prove they belong. He sees the insecurity in the way they brag, perform, exaggerate, and scramble to stay ahead. To him, their effort is a confession. They need others to confirm their value. The Sigma never hands his power over like that. He doesn't need the world to tell him he is enough. He doesn't need someone else's failure to feel stronger. He doesn't rely on approval because he has already built his identity without it. This is why he stays quiet when others compete. He knows the moment he enters the game, he gives the players importance they haven't earned. He knows that joining the competition validates the belief that their standards matter to him. But they don't, not even a little. Instead of rushing toward the spotlight, he walks in the opposite direction, toward solitude, clarity, and self-mastery. That's where real strength grows, not in proving yourself to strangers, but in building yourself for no one's recognition. Here is the part that others never understand. By not needing validation, the Sigma becomes the most powerful person in the room. Competitors exhaust themselves trying to impress. He conserves energy. Competitors reveal their weaknesses through ego. He remains unreadable. Competitors fear losing. Because their identity depends on winning, he fears nothing. Because his identity is rooted in silence, not performance. In the end, the Sigma rises not because he competes, but because he refuses to. His value was never up for comparison. It was never something the world got to judge. And that is why he stays quiet when others fight. He knows their battle has nothing to do with him. He studies competitors' motives and weaknesses while they reveal everything through their ego. A Sigma male knows that ego is the greatest leak in any competitor's armor. While others rush into conflict fueled by pride, insecurity, or the need to be recognized, he steps back and watches the entire scene unfold. He observes who gets loud first, who tries hardest to impress, who brags without being asked, who exaggerates their achievements, who overreacts to being challenged. In their desperate attempt to appear powerful, they reveal exactly where they are weak. The Sigma doesn't need to confront them. He simply listens, studies, and lets their ego expose the truth they're trying to hide. Every boast, every defensive reaction, every attempt to dominate tells him more about their intentions than any conversation ever could. He understands that when people compete from ego, they become predictable. They show what triggers them, what scares them, what motivates them. They show how fragile their identity is and how badly they need others to validate their worth. And because the Sigma remains silent, they assume he's uninterested or uninvolved. But silence is his advantage. It keeps him invisible, while they reveal everything about themselves. By the time they realize he has been analyzing them the entire time, he already understands their strengths, their strategies, and more importantly, their vulnerabilities. He sees which ones are driven by insecurity, which ones fear irrelevance, which ones crumble under pressure, and which ones hide behind confidence they can't sustain. What makes him more dangerous is that he never shows his own motives. He doesn't brag. He doesn't flaunt his plans. He doesn't react when someone tries to provoke him. Because ego is loud, but intelligence is quiet. And the Sigma chooses quiet every time. While others expose their entire psychological blueprint through their need to be admired, he maintains a stillness that makes him unreadable. They don't know what he wants. They don't know what he's thinking. They don't know what he's preparing for. And nothing is more unsettling to a competitive mind than someone they cannot size up. The Sigma uses this understanding not to attack, but to stay ahead. By knowing what drives others, he knows exactly how to navigate around them without ever entering their games. He sees where they'll overextend, where they'll lose control, where their ego will sabotage them. He doesn't fight them. He lets them defeat themselves. And that is why he remains quiet when others compete. While they reveal their motives publicly, he shapes his strategy privately. Their ego gives everything away. His silence protects everything he is building. Halt's big enough injury doesn't conk the house because he's right. He's just. He refuses to waste energy proving himself in arenas that don't align with his path. A Sigma male understands something most people never learn. Not every battle is his battle, and not every arena deserves his presence. When he watches others compete for attention, status, or validation, he feels no urge to step in, because he knows exactly where he is going in life. His goals are internal, not external. His path is self-defined, not measured by comparison. So when someone tries to pull him into a competitive space, to prove himself, to outperform, to show what he's made of, he simply doesn't engage. Why? Because competing in the wrong arena distracts him from the silent mission he's building behind the scenes. He knows that energy is limited. Decisions shape destiny, and every distraction is a detour from becoming the man he is meant to be. He watches people exhaust themselves, trying to win approval from crowds that won't remember them. He sees them fighting to dominate spaces that don't matter in the long run. He sees them burning energy, proving themselves to people who don't influence their future. To him, that isn't ambition, it's misdirection. True power comes from choosing your battles, not getting dragged into everyone. And because the Sigma doesn't seek to impress anyone, he won't waste a single breath or drop of effort proving himself where the victory is meaningless. What makes him stand out is his discipline. He doesn't chase recognition, trends, or competitions designed to feed egos. If an arena doesn't advance his purpose, strengthen his identity, or align with his values, he walks past it without hesitation. He doesn't need people to understand his choices. He doesn't need applause for his silence. His focus is sharper than other people's noise. While they fight to be seen, he builds in the shadows. While they look for approval, he looks for alignment. While they chase momentary victories, he invests in long-term transformation. And here's the truth. This refusal to engage terrifies others. They mistake his silence for weakness, not realizing it is his greatest filter. By not reacting, he reveals which battles are beneath him. By not competing, he exposes who is driven by insecurity. By staying on his path, he shows who is lost in theirs. And the more he protects his energy, the faster he evolves. In the end, the Sigma male rises not by defeating others, but by refusing to fight meaningless wars. He knows that real success isn't found in being better than someone else. It's found in becoming better than who he used to be. And that journey never happens in an arena designed for someone else's applause. He knows silence destabilizes people who depend on comparison to feel superior. A Sigma male understands a psychological truth most people never notice. Those who thrive on competition require constant feedback. They need reactions, responses, tension, and comparison to validate their sense of superiority. The moment that cycle breaks, the moment the person they are competing with goes silent, their confidence begins to crack. And the Sigma uses this without saying a word. When someone tries to provoke him into proving himself, he simply doesn't respond. When they brag, he stays calm. When they seek admiration, he gives none. When they expect a reaction, he gives silence. That silence is not passivity, it is disruption. It denies them the emotional fuel their ego depends on. And it forces them to confront an uncomfortable truth. Their identity only stands when someone else agrees to play the game. He knows that silence creates a psychological vacuum and most people cannot handle it. Competitors start doubting themselves when he doesn't react. Their pride feels ignored. Their ego feels disrespected. Their confidence starts slipping because they cannot measure themselves against him. They begin asking, why isn't he responding? Why isn't he defending himself? Why isn't he threatened? Why doesn't he care? In that confusion, they expose their insecurities even more. The Sigma understands this dynamic deeply, which is why he chooses silence as his strongest move. By not engaging, he takes control of the emotional stage without stepping into the spotlight. Sigma o Inda. His silence also removes their power. People who rely on comparison need constant conflict to confirm their superiority. They need to feel above someone. But when the Sigma refuses to compete, refuses to react, refuses to validate the comparison, he becomes untouchable. They cannot measure themselves against someone who won't participate. They cannot establish dominance over someone who doesn't recognize the hierarchy. They cannot win a battle that only they are fighting. The Sigma's silence becomes a mirror, reflecting back their emptiness and dependence on external validation. And the more he stays quiet, the more unstable they become. They overextend themselves trying to get his attention. They exaggerate their achievements. They raise their voice. They try harder to be noticed. But the Sigma remains unmoved. His calmness becomes an undeniable statement. He is unaffected, uncontrollable, and uninterested in their ego games. In the end, silence becomes his advantage because it exposes what competition hides. It reveals who is driven by insecurity. It reveals who collapses without attention. It reveals who crumbles when comparison loses its power. And the Sigma male knows this. The person who speaks less often sees more, and the one who stays silent destabilizes everyone who depends on noise to feel significant. He chooses timing over noise, acting only when the moment guarantees maximum impact. A Sigma male has no interest in being the loudest or the fastest. He is interested in being the most effective. While others waste energy rushing into action just to appear confident or competitive, the Sigma waits. He studies the terrain, the intentions, the weaknesses in the environment, and the emotional temperature of the people around him. He knows that impact is not created by constant movement, but by precise intervention. So he remains still when others are scrambling, silent when others are shouting, observant when others are reacting. His calmness isn't hesitation, it's calculation. He is positioning himself, gathering information, and choosing the one moment where action will shift everything with the least effort and the greatest effect. People often misinterpret his quiet presence as passivity. They assume he's disengaged or uninterested because he isn't fighting for attention or pushing himself into the center. But the Sigma male understands something crucial. Action without timing is wasted force. The person who moves first is often the one who exposes themselves, reveals their strategy, and makes mistakes they can't undo. But the one who moves last, with clarity and intention, holds the advantage. While others reveal their fears, their motives, and their lack of preparation, the Sigma watches patiently. By the time he takes action, he knows exactly where to strike, what to say, and how to move in a way that changes the entire situation. His timing is psychological. He knows when someone is most vulnerable to truth. He knows when a system is most fragile. He knows when a decision will have the highest effect with the lowest resistance. This is why his moves always feel powerful, even if they're subtle. He doesn't waste effort on noise or battles that don't matter. He doesn't react just because someone provokes him. He doesn't speak just because silence feels uncomfortable. The Sigma acts when the moment is fully aligned with his intention. And that patience is what makes him formidable. In a competitive environment, this becomes his greatest weapon. While others burn themselves out trying to dominate early, he conserves energy. He lets people reveal their strategies, their insecurities, their blind spots. When the confusion peaks, when the noise becomes unsustainable, when the crowd is exhausted, that is when he acts. And when he does, his impact feels unstoppable, because it arrives with total clarity and zero hesitation. One step at the right time is stronger than 10 steps taken blindly. To outsiders, it looks like luck. To those who know better, it looks like mastery. But to the Sigma, it's simple. Noise fades quickly. Timing changes everything. He sees competition as a distraction from self-mastery, not a measure of worth. A Sigma male understands that the loud battles people fight around him have nothing to do with real growth. Competition, the desperate need to outperform, impress, and prove superiority is, to him, a trap disguised as ambition. He sees how people define their worth by who they can beat rather than who they can become. He watches them chase trophies that lose meaning, opinions that change overnight, and validation that evaporates as soon as someone else shines brighter. To him, this entire cycle is noise, a distraction, a detour away from the one mission that actually matters, becoming the strongest version of himself, not the strongest illusion for others. While others inflate their egos through comparison, the Sigma turns inward. He knows that external victories rarely lead to internal evolution. He understands that beating someone else doesn't elevate him, it only anchors him to their level. Competing with others limits the imagination. Competing with oneself expands it. And that is why he refuses to measure his progress against anyone. He has no desire to outrun those walking in different directions. His path is his own, and the only person he must surpass is the man he was yesterday. This philosophy frees him from the anxiety, insecurity, and pressure that competition creates. He rises because he grows, not because he wins. People often mistake this mindset for indifference or arrogance, but it is discipline. The Sigma doesn't avoid competition because he fears losing. He avoids it because he refuses to lose himself. He knows that when you focus too much on others, you lose sight of your purpose. You begin shaping your life in reaction to theirs instead of in alignment with your own mission. And nothing weakens a man faster than abandoning his direction for someone else's applause. So while the crowd argues, performs, and chases validation, the Sigma remains anchored in silence, training his mind, sharpening his skills, and expanding his world privately. This detachment gives him a rare advantage: efficiency. He doesn't waste time chasing meaningless wins. He doesn't dilute his energy fighting battles that don't build him. He doesn't burn out trying to outperform people who aren't even on his path. Instead, he invests every moment into mastery. Emotional mastery, mental mastery, strategic mastery. And because he evolves while others compete, he often surpasses them without ever entering the race. In the end, the Sigma male's strength comes from this truth: the man who focuses on himself eventually outgrows the man who focuses on others. Competition divides attention. Self-mastery multiplies it. And that is why he stays silent. Because every step taken inward brings him further than any contest ever could. He understands that the one who stays calm is always more powerful than the one who seeks to win. A Sigma male knows that true power is not found in force, noise, or aggression. It is found in calmness. When others enter competition fueled by ego and fear, their emotions make them sloppy. They speak too fast, react too quickly, and expose too much. They rush to prove themselves, and in doing so, reveal exactly what they're afraid of losing. But the Sigma? He remains still, steady, unshaken. His calmness is not indifference, it is control. He understands that the person who needs to win is already compromised, already driven by insecurity, already tangled in the pressure of needing validation. But the one who stays calm cannot be manipulated, cannot be provoked, cannot be forced into mistakes. Calmness becomes his armor and his leverage. He sees how competition unravels people, how the loudest competitor often panics when the outcome is uncertain, how the one who brags the most often fears being forgotten, how the person who fights hardest to dominate usually fears irrelevance the most. He watches all of this play out like a psychological performance, and because he isn't emotionally attached to the outcome, he remains the only person in the room thinking clearly. While others are consumed by wanting to win, he is free to observe, predict, and strategize. His calmness allows him to see angles others miss and opportunities others are too anxious to notice. People often mistake calmness for passivity, but they don't understand that calmness is a decision. A Sigma chooses it because he knows that emotions cloud judgment, while composure sharpens it. He refuses to let competition pull him into chaos. He refuses to let someone else's urgency dictate his actions. He refuses to respond from fear or pride. Instead, he waits for the moment when the noise burns out and clarity appears. In that stillness, he acts, not to prove himself, but to enforce the direction he has already chosen. And here is the truth that unsettles his competitors the most. His calmness makes him impossible to predict. They don't know what he's thinking. They don't know when he will act. They don't know what he wants. Their entire strategy falls apart because they cannot read him. Meanwhile, he sees straight through them. He sees the insecurity behind their competitiveness. He sees the impulse behind their aggression. He sees the weakness behind their desire to win. And because he never enters their emotional battlefield, he never loses control. The Sigma male understands that anyone can shout, but only the truly powerful can stay silent. Anyone can rush to win, but only the strong can remain calm while others panic. Noise may intimidate the unsteady, but calmness controls the outcome. And that is why he doesn't compete like the rest. He knows the quiet mind always wins in the long run. When the world screams for attention, the Sigma male's silence becomes the one thing no competitor can match. He doesn't win by shouting, rushing, or proving himself. He wins by remaining centered when everyone else loses control. His calmness, his timing, his ability to stand apart from meaningless battles. That is what makes him untouchable. Because while others fight to be noticed, he evolves quietly. And when he finally moves, the shift is undeniable. If this resonated with you, tell me in the comments. Do you stay calm when others compete? Drop your word, calm power. And make sure you subscribe to Silent Wise, where the strongest voice is often the quietest one.